Imagine someone you love deeply passes away, and you have exactly 24 hours to bury them.
Right, which is just so fast.
It is. Like, there's no time for elaborate planning, no weekend service to accommodate distant flights, no viewing. For a lot of people in the West, that timeline sounds impossibly jarring.
Oh, absolutely. It's a complete shock to the system.
But in Jewish tradition, this ticking clock, it isn't about rushing the family at all. It is actually considered the ultimate act of respect.
Yeah, it's a complete inversion of what many of us are accustomed to. I mean, when you look at the modern death care industry, the focus is often on preserving the moment.
Right, like trying to freeze time.
Exactly. Pausing time, extending the period before the final goodbye. But the Jewish approach to death and mourning is an entirely different architecture. It's immediate, it's raw, and it is incredibly structured.
And walking into that structure when you are entirely unfamiliar with it, well, it can be really intimidating.
Oh, for sure. People get so anxious.
It's like navigating an unfamiliar mourning tradition without a guide. It's like trying to read a map in the dark while carrying a heavy weight.
Yeah.
You desperately want to support your grieving friend, but you're terrified of doing the wrong thing.
Nobody wants to accidentally offend someone at a funeral.
Exactly. So in today's deep dive, we are turning on the flashlight. We're using a comprehensive guide to explore the deeply meaningful customs of a Jewish funeral. We want to unpack that core philosophy of simplicity and equality.
And really provide a practical guide so you, the listener, can confidently step into that space and just be there for your friend.
Because when you actually peel back the layers of these rituals, you realize they aren't just like arbitrary rules.
No, not at all. You're looking at a system refined over thousands of years, and it's designed entirely around two core principles, right? Absolute equality for the person who died, and an impenetrable psychological safety net for the living.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because 24 hours, that doesn't give families any time to plan an elaborate event or a fancy viewing. Isn't that just incredibly jarring?
It sounds that way, yeah. But to understand the urgency, you really have to understand the theology of the body and the soul in this tradition.
Okay, lay that out for us.
So the physical body is viewed as a sacred vessel. It held the soul, the essence of the person. Once that soul departs, holding on to the physical vessel, like delaying its natural return to the earth, is traditionally viewed as a form of disrespect.
Oh, I see. So it's almost like keeping them trapped.
Basically, yes. It's keeping the body in a state of limbo. The urgency is about prompt respect, getting the body back to the earth as naturally and quickly as possible. Wealth and status, they just no longer matter.
So it's not about making things easier for the funeral director. It's about honoring the vessel immediately.
Exactly.
And the preparation of that vessel is fascinating because it's not just handed off to a commercial mortuary in the way a lot of us are used to. The source material details this group called the Chevra Kadisha.
Yeah, the Chevra Kadisha, which translates to the sacred society or holy society. And this is a crucial detail. These are often just volunteers from the local community.
Why, volunteers? Really?
Yeah, they aren't strangers in a clinical setting. They are fellow community members who come together to perform the tahara, which is this meticulous, incredibly reverent ritual washing and purifying of the body.
The idea that your actual neighbors or peers would be the ones to gently wash your body and prepare you for the earth. I mean, there's an incredible, almost overwhelming intimacy to that.
It is deeply intimate, and it's treated with the utmost respect. The tahara is accompanied by specific prayers, and otherwise it is performed in absolute silence.
Wow, just complete silence.
Yeah, to maintain the highest level of dignity for the deceased. And the way they dress the body afterward directly introduces that philosophy of absolute equality we were talking about.
Right, because you aren't picking out like their best three-piece suit or a favorite evening gown. The guide notes they use something called takrachim.
Yes, takrachim.
And these are incredibly simple, completely unadorned white linen garments. It really doesn't matter if you were a billionaire CEO or someone who struggled to pay rent every month, You're wearing the exact same plain white linen.
It forces a total leveling of the playing field. I mean, in life, we use clothing all the time to signal status, wealth, identity.
Oh, constantly.
But in death, those social constructs are intentionally stripped away. And that philosophy of simplicity extends directly to the casket, too.
Yeah, the casket requirement is wild to me, especially when you compare it to the modern American way of death.
Oh, the contrast is stark.
We see people going into massive debt to buy these premium $10,000 mahogany caskets. They've got velvet linings, memory foam pillows, bronze handles. But the Jewish tradition requires a plain wooden box.
Plain pine, usually.
And when they say plain, the guide stresses this zero metal. No metal hinges, no steel screws, just wood and wooden pegs.
Right, and this is where the physical reality really meets the spiritual philosophy. The intentional removal of metal ensures that the casket and the body inside it can decompose naturally and simultaneously.
So dust to dust isn't just like a poetic metaphor set at the graveside.
No, it is the literal functional blueprint for the burial. A metal vault or a chemically treated casket actively fights against the earth. The plain pine box embraces it.
That makes so much sense. And it also explains why embalming and open casket viewings are generally forbidden in this tradition.
Precisely. If the goal is a natural, immediate return to the earth, pumping the body full of preservative chemicals fundamentally contradicts that.
Right, you're literally fighting the natural process.
And psychologically, skipping the open casket viewing shifts the entire focus of the community. In the Western model, a viewing is often about cosmetic presentation, making the person look natural or peaceful.
Yeah, getting their makeup right, fixing their hair.
Exactly. But by removing that visual, the Jewish tradition insists that your final memory of the person shouldn't be a cosmetically prepared body in a box. The focus shifts entirely to their spirit, their character, and your internal memory of them.
Which naturally dictates the tone of the actual funeral service. Because there's no physical body on display to look at, the words become the entire focal point.
The service is usually very brief. It takes place at a synagogue, a funeral home, or even just right at the graveside.
But the sources are very clear on this. This is not a celebration of life party.
No, the modern trend of the celebration of life, while it's beautiful in its own right, often tries to bypass the heavy, uncomfortable reality of grief.
Right, with upbeat music and joyful anecdotes and a slideshow.
Exactly. The traditional Jewish service doesn't do that. It is humble, it is solemn, and it demands that the attendees actually sit with the gravity of the loss.
There's minimal to no music. You aren't going to hear a soaring pop anthem. The core of the service revolves around psalms, prayers, and the Hesp, which is the eulogy.
And the Hesp isn't just a recitation of their resume or their career achievements either.
Right. It's a deeply reflective accounting of their moral character.
Right.
The good they put into the world.
Yes. And while the community is absorbing those words, the immediate family is enduring a very different, deeply physical experience of grief.
Yeah, and this is where I think the tradition offers one of its most profound psychological tools. There's a ritual called Kriah.
Yes, Kriah.
Before or during the service, the immediate relatives, so parents, children, siblings, spouses, they actually tear a piece of their clothing. Or in some modern practices, they wear a torn black ribbon.
It's a very powerful moment.
When I was reading about this, it struck me as an incredible analogy.
Yeah.
It's like taking the invisible internal heartbreak of grief and making it physically visible on the outside.
That is exactly the mechanism at play. Grief is notoriously isolating, right? You feel like you have been ripped apart internally, but you walk out into the street and you look completely normal.
And society expects you to look normal.
Exactly. Kriah takes that internal rupture and externalizes it. You physically hear the fabric tear. You wear that torn fabric for the next week. It is a public, undeniable manifestation of a broken heart.
It's like a signal to the world saying, I am not okay right now. Handle me with care.
Yes, it validates the mourner's pain without them having to say a single word. And that visceral physical engagement with grief continues right out to the cemetery.
Okay, so this is the part of the guide that I really wanted to ask you about. Because if you are an outsider attending a Jewish funeral, this might actually shock you.
The burial itself.
Yeah. At the graveside, after the casket is lowered, the attendees are invited to step forward, take a shovel, and actually drop dirt directly onto the casket.
It's a very striking practice.
I have to push back here on behalf of the listener because asking a grieving mother or a best friend to literally bury their loved one, doesn't that risk traumatizing them further? It sounds so harsh.
It is undeniably harsh. But let's contrast it with the alternative. In many Western funerals, the casket is left suspended over the open grave. The dirt is hidden under green, artificial turf.
Right, it looks like a golf course.
The family drops a single flower, they get in their cars, and they drive away before the groundskeeper comes out with a backhoe to actually bury the body. It's sanitized. It creates an illusion.
It's almost like a magic trick to pretend the finality isn't happening right then and there.
Exactly. The Jewish tradition refuses to sanitize death. Hearing the sound of earth hitting a wooden casket is a devastating, hollow thud. It shatters any lingering denial. Psychologically, it forces acceptance.
Wow.
But what's fascinating here is that beyond the psychology, there is a profound spiritual concept called the final mitzvah.
Right, and a mitzvah is a commandment, or like a good deed.
Right. Shoveling the earth is considered the ultimate, most selfless mitzvah you can perform for a person. And that's precisely because they can never, ever repay you for it.
Oh, wow. That is beautiful.
You aren't leaving the heavy, heartbreaking lifting to a stranger with a tractor. The community that loved this person is physically taking responsibility for returning them to the earth.
You see it through to the very, very end. You do the hardest work yourself. And what's brilliant about this architecture is that once the grave is filled, once that physical work is done, the entire system pivots.
Yes, the transition is immediate.
The focus shifts sharply away from the person who died, and the spotlight shines directly on holding up the living.
This is where we enter the structured mourning periods. Immediately after the burial, the immediate family begins a period called Shiva.
Shiva literally means 7, right? It's a 7-day mourning period where the family goes home and they simply stop.
They completely stop.
They don't go to the office. They don't run to the grocery store. They don't answer emails. The world comes to a halt and the community comes to them.
And the physical environment of a Shiva house is highly modified to reflect this state of pause. For instance, you might walk in and notice that all the mirrors in the house are covered with sheets.
Which I found so curious. Like, why cover the mirrors?
It's about removing vanity. When you look in a mirror, you are focused on the self, right? How your hair looks, how your outfit fits.
Oh, of course.
Shiva is a time entirely dedicated to internal reflection and honoring the deceased. Covering the mirrors removes the distraction of physical appearance. Also, you will often see the mourners sitting on low stools or even the floor rather than up on comfortable couches.
So they're bringing themselves physically low to match the emotional low of grief.
Precisely. It's a physical grounding.
So if you are the listener and you are stepping onto that stage like walking up to the front door of a Shiva house to support a friend, what is the actual expectation? We all have that internal panic of, what do I say? How do I not make this worse?
It's so common to feel that way. But the golden rule of paying a Shiva call, and this is a relief for so many people, is that you are not expected to say anything profound. In fact, traditional etiquette dictates that the visitor should not initiate the conversation.
Wait, really? You just walk in and stay quiet?
Yeah, you walk in, you offer a hug or a handshake if appropriate, you sit down, and you let the mourner take the lead.
Just follow their cues.
Exactly. If they want to cry and talk endlessly about the person who died, you listen. If they want to talk about the latest baseball game to distract themselves, you talk about baseball. And if they want to sit in absolute heavy silence, your job is to sit in that silence with them.
That completely removes the burden from the visitor to try and, fix the grief.
Yeah.
You don't need a rehearsed speech. You just need to be a warm body in the room.
Because grief cannot be fixed with a platitude. The genius of the Shiva structure is that it ensures the family is never alone in the void of their house for that first agonizing week.
People are just constantly there holding that space.
Friends and neighbors organize the meals, handle the chores, and often daily prayer services are held right in the living room. The community literally forms a physical buffer around the mourners.
But obviously, life has to resume eventually. The guide explains that after those 7 days, the mourners transition into shloshim, which is the 30-day period of less intense mourning.
Right, shloshim means 30. During this time, they might go back to work and resume basic daily functions, but there are still guardrails in place. They generally avoid celebrations, live music, or parties.
It's like re-entering the world, but with training wheels on. You aren't expected to be the life of the party 3 weeks after burying your spouse.
Exactly. It's a gradual return.
And for someone who lost a parent, that specific mourning period actually extends for a full year. The timeline perfectly maps onto the actual psychology of human grief rather than fighting it.
It acknowledges that healing is not linear, and it certainly doesn't happen overnight.
So let's distill this down to the practical takeaways for our listener. If you were invited to the funeral service or to the Shiva house, there are a few very specific things to keep in mind. First is attire.
Keep it simple.
Yeah.
Modest, dark, or subdued colors.
Right. But for men, you will likely be asked to wear a head covering, a kippah, also known as a yarmulke.
And if you are not Jewish, you should not feel awkward or like you are appropriating a culture by wearing one. It is simply a sign of respect for the space and the gravity of the event.
Do you need to bring your own?
Oh, no. Synagogues and funeral homes almost always have a basket of them right at the door. You just take one and place it on your head.
Good to know. Now, Here is a massive trap that people fall into because it is so deeply ingrained in Western culture. Flowers.
Yes, the flowers.
The minute we hear bad news, the reflex is to call the florist and send a massive wreath. But the guide is explicit. Do not bring or send flowers to a Jewish funeral or Shiva house.
The logic here goes back to the concept of the mitzvah we discussed earlier. Flowers are beautiful, but they are fleeting. They wilt and they die, which is a necessary reminder of mortality in a house of mourning.
So what do you do instead to show you care?
You make a charitable donation. The family will often designate a charity, perhaps medical research, a food bank, or a cause the deceased was passionate about.
So you're putting good back into the world.
Exactly. By donating in their honor, you are creating a living tribute. You are actively continuing their legacy of good in the world, which is far more permanent than a bouquet of lilies.
Turning grief into tangible action. I love that. I also want to touch on the language we use. We are so conditioned to say, I'm so sorry for your loss.
It's the default reflex.
But the problem with I'm sorry is that it often puts the grieving person in the awkward position of having to comfort you. They end up replying, oh, thank you, it's okay. And it's not okay.
Right. It forces a social pleasantry in a space that doesn't have room for it.
Exactly. So the guide offers a deeply appropriate alternative phrase. Instead of I'm sorry, you can say, may their memory be a blessing.
It is a profound shift in perspective. May their memory be a blessing acknowledges that the person is gone, but expresses the hope that the life they lived, the lessons they taught, and the memories you hold will eventually become a source of comfort rather than just a source of pain.
And families will often use resources, like the funeral program site mentioned in our sources, to print materials or memorial keepsakes that outline some of these customs or provide translations of prayers.
Which is incredibly helpful for visitors.
Yeah, so if you are handed a program, read it. It is there to be your flashlight in the dark.
Ultimately, what you are participating in is a masterclass in holding space for pain. The Jewish tradition doesn't try to shrink death. It doesn't dress it up in makeup or hide it under artificial grass.
It faces the stark reality head on.
Yes, but it counters that harsh reality with an overwhelming, highly structured outpouring of community love.
And knowing the why behind these actions entirely changes your role as a guest. You aren't just a confused observer wondering why the casket is plain wood or why everyone is shoveling dirt.
You understand that you are participating in a system of absolute equality for the dead and vital protection for the living.
It empowers you to be exactly what your grieving friend needs, a sturdy, informed presence.
Exactly.
Which really leaves us with a critical lens to view our own modern lives through. When you look at how standard corporate culture handles grief, maybe giving someone 3 days of bereavement leave before expecting them back on Zoom, answering emails, pretending everything is fine.
It's brutal.
It looks incredibly inadequate, doesn't it? Imagine if, instead of that forced artificial bounce back, our entire society adopted the wisdom of the Shiva.
That would change everything.
Imagine if we all had a dedicated, protected period where our only job was to stop, to sit, and to be entirely held up by the people around us.
It fundamentally challenges our obsession with productivity over humanity.
It really does. Navigating grief is never going to be easy, but it doesn't have to be a solitary stumble in the dark. Sometimes, stepping into a completely different ancient tradition is exactly what we need to remember how to take care of each other.